Hello. We are going to go ahead and continue with our look at the Torah portion. We're looking at Genesis chapter 39. We're going to be looking at not only looking at what we see going on with Joseph over here and his situations that he's dealing with over in Mitzrayim, but we also, of course, want to think about how we're able to see Yeshua through the things that's going on with Joseph, and also be able to see what types of underlying principles that we're able to see within the context of the chapter here. And so let's read let's just for now just read these first three verses here of chapter 39. Okay, very good. So when we look over here, oh, thank you very much. Looking at Joseph, entering into this situation over here with Potiphar, we see that it talks about this whole idea of his master seeing that Yahweh was with him. It's interesting because when we think about these people, these people who were Egyptians, of course, it's interesting to look and see how they kind of perceive things. We know that these people, they were, I guess, to a degree, you can say, spiritual people, only to say that they understood that there was a creator. Whether they actually gave the proper credit to who it was due is a whole other situation, but they understood the idea of there being gods, and they also connected kind of prosperity and things with gods per se. So when we see over here where it says in verse 2 that verse 3, that his master saw that Yahweh was with him and that Yahweh made all that he did to prosper in his hand. I don't think that I don't think that the scripture is saying that it actually knew that it was the Most High Yah that was doing it. I think that they prescribed it to like the nameless, faceless Almighty, and just was able to see his his prosperity, the things that was happening to him, almost, and looking at him as if Joseph, I'm saying, acting as this lucky charm, per se. Because of course we know that these people, they had these many gods that they actually made. So we know that they weren't actually real deities, but they would, because they of course made them. So when we look over and see where it talks about this idea of the master being able to see that Yah was with him, I think that's just to say that they was able to recognize the prosperity of Joseph, and then also just ascribe that or prescribe that to his God, and the blessings that was upon him as a result. I wanted to look at hold on one second here. Wait a second here. Wait, is everybody able to hear? Is everybody able to hear Elder Yawanathan speak when he talks? You able to say something real quick? I can hear you, yeah.
Let me see if I can pull it
I
up.
know, it looks like they were saying on
I
the
couldn't hear him.
in the chat that they wasn't able to hear you.
Are you able to you gotta add it to the scene? Or
Yeah, I did. Maybe I didn't whenever he was talking before. Hold on, let's
Mhm.
can you go in there real quick and see if you can
Yeah, I
hear?
can hear.
Can you hear that? That's strange because you can't hear them in there, and they can't hear you on there. Wait a second. I added your audio already. I don't know why I can't hear you. Hold on, let me see something real quick.
I couldn't hear him. Did you mute it? Did you mute
You
yourself?
couldn't hear?
I couldn't hear anything.
Nobody else could hear anything either. We got his microphone added to this right here. I should be able to.
There's two microphones.
I know, but they're both just the same one. Can you talk again real quick?
Yeah. Y'all hear
Like
me?
he can,
Testing.
I can hear him.
Testing. 1, 2, 3.
But nobody else in YouTube land can hear him for some reason. I already did that over there. That's just.
Did you add this?
Yeah.
I guess you did that. Let's see. No, I heard the test.
Oh.
It might have been because of the mics.
Okay, there we go. Y'all hear me?
Okay,
everybody said we got
now.
it. Okay.
Now we doing something. Okay, good. Okay, so that being said, let's go over here because I wanted to talk a little bit about the fact that again, when we look at these people who were, of course, heathens, and the things that they were looking at in order to see in order to say that the Most High was with him was the stuff that was happening to him. But I wanted to look at a couple of things because I think we read this verse last week. I'm going to pull it up over here. Look at Matthew 5. Can you read Matthew 5 and 45?
Okay. Matthew 5, verse 45. So that you become sons of your Father in the heavens, because he makes his sun rise on the wicked and on the good, and sends rain on the righteous and on the unrighteous.
Okay,
Keep going.
so
Okay.
when we look over here and we see what the master is talking about over here is that things that can be considered blessings, kind of happens to everyone. Everyone gets the same beautiful sun shining on them, right? When people's crops need rain, the wicked people, they out there planting stuff too, and their crops, they receive rain just like everyone else. If we look at Ecclesiastes, let's look at Ecclesiastes. Let's see, chapter 9 and verse 2. What's that say?
It says, "It is the same for all, one event to the righteous and to the wrong, to the good and to the clean, and to the unclean, and to the one slaughtering and to the one not slaughtering. As is the good one, so is the sinner, the one swearing as the one fearing an oath."
So when we look over here, we see this same kind of principle being talked about over here. Just to say that we can't necessarily look and what we're actually saying is that the Mitzrites. Oh, that's mixing of
Mazarites,
mixing of English and Hebrew together.
right?
The Egyptians, they weren't real spiritual people. They didn't have a real true spiritual understanding of what was going on. Is really the only point that I'm trying to make over here.
They would be offended if there was. They wasn't offended by Joseph's God.
No. Because they had all kinds of gods for everything. I'm just saying when we see in verse 3 where it talks about the fact that they saw that the Most High was with him, I would tend to think that it was more kind of a general idea that they saw these good things happening and they just ascribed it to the Most High. Now we know that it says in James and 1 and 17, it says, what's that say? James 1 and 17. You read that?
Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no change nor shadow of turning.
So we know that we can say that these good and perfect gifts do indeed come from the Most High. But at the same time, we also know that, the Most High allows for, in this place that we are, he allows for people to be blessed who aren't necessarily righteous. Because when we think about something that is a universal truth in terms of, sowing and reaping, you don't necessarily have to be a righteous person to put seeds in the ground, and then plants come up as a result of it.
Use some common sense.
Yeah, you just kind of just have to have some basic knowledge, and these things happen. But I guess the main point that we want to deal with over here is found in First Corinthians. Let's see, in 2 and verse 10. Start reading at verse 10 down through the end over there.
It says, but Elohim has revealed to them to us through his spirit, for the spirit searches all matters, even the depths of Elohim. For who among men knows the thoughts of man, except the spirit of the man that is in him? So also the thoughts of Elohim no one has known, except the spirit of Elohim. And we have received not the spirit of the world, but the spirit that is from Elohim, in order to know that Elohim has favorably given us, which we also speak, not in words which man's wisdom teaches, but which the set apart spirit teaches, comparing spiritual matters with spiritual matters. But the natural man does not receive the matters of the spirit of Elohim, for they are foolishness to him, and he is unable to know them because they are spiritually discerned. But he who is spiritual discerns indeed all matters, but he himself is discerned by no one. For who has known the mind of Yahweh? Who shall instruct him? But we have the mind of Messiah.
Okay, so when we think about the idea of the level of spirituality that is possessed by these Egyptians over here, I'm saying that they don't have that spiritual connection. They're looking at these physical things and just ascribing to them what they will, but they really think that when they're sitting up here doing these things for or against this man, that they are the one who's moving the situation along. Meanwhile, the Most High is in control. The true and living Elohim is in control the whole time. So we see over here these things going on, these things that are getting ready to be going on. And even though it may look a way, we know that the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is behind all of this stuff that has happened and that will happen going forward. So again, we look at how these people are dealing with Joseph. They've got themselves this lucky charm that everything that he touches turns to gold. So they kind of elevate him, in their to be involved in Potiphar and his dealings and everything, because he sees that he's not able to fail. He's only able to prosper. Okay, so let's keep on looking at this. Let's read 4, 5, and 6. Let me get back over to Genesis over here. Okay, there we go.
Okay, 4, 5, and 6. Okay. So Joseph found favor in his eyes and served him. And he appointed him over his house and gave him into his hand all that he had. And it came to be from the time that he appointed him over his house and all that he had, that Yahweh blessed the Mitzrayim's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of Yahweh was on all that he had in his house and in the field. And he left in Joseph's hand all that he had, and he did not know what he had except for the bread which he ate. And Joseph was handsome in form and handsome in appearance.
And also read verse 7 there too.
And after these events, it came to be that his master's wife lifted up her eyes to Joseph and said, "Lie with me."
Okay, very good. So we look over here, we see that again, Joseph, he goes over here, he gets sold into slavery. He gets bought by this person who's like this dignitary in Egypt, and it says that he found favor in his eyes, and he was appointed over his house, and so all that he had he put in Joseph's hand. This verse here, verse 6, is interesting. And he left in Joseph's hand all that he had, and he did not know what he had except for the bread which he ate.
What is that?
I thought that was kind of interesting, because when we think about that, I sometimes feel like Potiphar sometimes in this regard. When we think about the idea, I get up and I go to work, I make a good living wage, every day I go over here. But I don't really know what goes on with all of that. I just make the money and I put it in the bank, and I know that there's food on the table. It gets cooked. I go away, I come home, there's food that's cooked. Stuff magically appears in the refrigerator. I don't know how it gets there. It's like when you look at what is being said over here, there's so much responsibility placed on Joseph over here, that Potiphar put so much he has so much trust in him. He don't even have to think about his affairs. He don't even know the fullness of what he has, because he don't have to think about it. He can just think about just sitting around and have people feeding him with grapes, if that's a thing. I don't know why like royalty like is expressed by people being fed with grapes, but I think that's probably all that Potiphar probably had to think about, because he had this Joseph over here who was able, he added, that's his name, right? So he added to Potiphar's situation, so much so that he didn't even have to think about it. He didn't even have to think about his situation. Kind of like how I don't have to think about my situation. I got this. Yeah. Well, more than that, but yeah, there's many things that I'm able to entrust in, my administrative assistant, that I don't have to think about these things. All I know is that there's bread when I eat it, and somebody made it. I don't have to worry about the kneading and none of that. It's on my plate, and then I just eat it. But I'm saying that it speaks to, when we think about these verses over here, it speaks to the level of which Joseph controlled his master's affairs. He took care of everything, right? But also, when we think about when it talks about the idea of his wife now lifting up her eyes and seeing Joseph and wanting to lie with him, is interesting when we think about the level of trust that Potiphar had with Joseph. Is that, you know, when you look at these kind of people, these helpers, these people who take care of things, especially when they're in the proximity of their, you know, of their wives and things. You know, he was at the end of the day, he was like a servant. And so it wasn't nothing for these people at these times to be making eunuchs out of their servants. So they didn't have to sit up here and worry about them messing around with their women folk that they wasn't supposed to be messing around with. But again, when we think about the level of trust that was given to Joseph, he was able to just move freely wherever he was and be seen and be in close proximity where he could even be kind of you know, offered the sacred offerings of the wife of Potiphar. So, you know, just in these verses over here, we're able to see kind of the level of trust that existed with Joseph, you know, from Potiphar. And then also when we look at verse, let's see, I guess that's verse 6, where it says, and Joseph was handsome in form and in appearance. Now, if we go back over to let's see, verse, what is that? Chapter 29, I think. Here in 17 says it's got the same thing to say about his mother over here. Can you read verse 17 right there?
It says, and Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was beautiful of form and beautiful of appearance.
So, you know, Joseph, you know, he kind of had this, you know, he inherited the appearance of his mother, obviously. And so probably, you know, you think about those Egyptians, they are clean faced. So he probably kind of looked a little funny because he didn't have any probably hair on him. You know, they wasn't sitting there. They was always cutting all the hair off of people for whatever reason. But you was probably really able to see that he looked kind of just like his mother looked, which again, you know, speaks to you know, what's going on here with Potiphar's wife. So we want to look at this some more because we want to talk about the reaction and the actions and reactions of Joseph over here. Let me pull that back up. Let's go back. Let's continue reading. Let's see here. Read 7, 8, and 9.
Okay. And it says, and after these events, it came to be that his master's wife lifted up her eyes to Joseph and said, lie with me. But he refused and said to his master's wife, look, my master does not know what is with me in the house, and he has given into my hand all that he has. No one is greater in this house than I, and he has not withheld whatever from me, but you. because you are his wife. And how should I do this great evil and sin against Elohim?
Okay, very good. So we see over here, there's two things. There's two things that Joseph brings up over here. First of all, he doesn't want to betray the trust of his master, because we already talked about the great trust that he has for him, and you don't want to mess that up, right? That means something to him, the thing, the relationship that has been established, the responsibilities that have been given over to Joseph, but mostly he says that he doesn't want to betray the trust of his master in heaven, the Most High, right? This is the most important thing, right? And he understands that. He doesn't, as it says in verse 9, he doesn't want to do this great evil and sin against Elohim. And so when we think about this over here, the thing that we got to think about is the Most High's relationship with Joseph's relationship with the Most High is influencing now his actions and relations with people that he deals with, right? Where this intimate kind of personal thing that we have an experience with our Creator affects how we deal with people in the natural realm, right? In the flesh. And so when we think about the fact that where it talks about in Proverbs the idea of fear being the beginning of wisdom, right? It's the beginning of wisdom. And so that, even though we say that is the beginning over there, it also carries on throughout your situation, where it kind of shapes and molds how you behave. When we think about children, sometimes children forget, and they need to be reminded of the fear, right? When they can remember the fear, they're able to act right and do all of the things that are pleasing in the eyes of their father. But sometimes they forget, and then they need to be reminded, and that fear needs to be reestablished, right? And so in a perfect situation, the fear don't have to be reestablished, and they can just keep on remembering. And when things happen that they might or might not do, they're able to choose the right thing because they remember the fear. And so when we look at Joseph over here, we see that he has a real relationship with the Almighty, and then this thing happens where he has this woman who's the wife of his master who wants to do things with him, and he, even though probably was had all types of opportunity to be able to go ahead and do whatever he was going to do, right? But because of the fact that he had that fear of the Most High inside of him, he knew that even though no human being might not see him doing anything, the Most High is always able to see him doing something, right? And so that was the thing that was able to allow for him to move properly. And so when we think about kind of these underlying principles, one of the things we're going to talk about over here in a little few moments here is integrity. It's easy for you to be able to kind of say what needs to be said to somebody, when they're right there. You can have all of the right things to say, all of the answers. You can able to do all of the things, but what is actually going on the inside? So that's the thing right there, right? So when you're able to actually do what's right, when nobody could even know whether you're doing the right thing or not, except for the Most High, when you're able to do what needs to be done at all times, right? That's kind of the place where we need to be getting to, right? Because it's easy to say, well, nobody's going to see. I might as well just go ahead and nobody's even going to know, right? Kids are perfect. They always doing that. Well, ain't nobody. You see them. They sit up there and they reach for stuff and they looking over out the side of their eyes to see if somebody's looking or not. And that's not integrity, right? What?
Well, I was going to say how integrity also doesn't depend on circumstance, because Joseph had a lot of reasons to be mad at the Most High. If he wanted to be upset about his plight or whatever, even though he's the head of this person's household, he's still a slave. And at this point, he doesn't know how he's going to get out of that situation. But at the same time, he's not allowing his situation to, cause him to disobey Yah, is where I'm going. Or just to say, well, Yah's hiding his face from me. So, it's almost like if a child don't get something the child wants right when he wants it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's not going to listen to his father or something like that.
Yeah.
I deal with that with the children. So if they don't get what they want, then they protest or whatever. Boycott.
Yeah. Boycott rightness. Yeah. Right. So when we think about that, again, we think about the relationship that we have with the father, the relationship that Joseph had with the father. It always gets back to fear and that relationship that we have with him governing how we are. And so even if we was to say that Joseph was kind of in the back of his situation, like, why is this happening to me? How could the Most High do this to me? It stayed over there, right? It wasn't something that was manifest. I don't think. I think that in spite of his situations and his circumstances, he was able to maintain and always look at his situation, probably because even though there were low parts in his situation, it seemed like there was always rebounds. Like, we don't know what the time frame was, how long it took for him to go from the bottom of that dry pit to prospering with Potiphar. But it seems as if, the one thing happened and then the next thing happened. And in fact, it seems as if, these things kind of just happen kind of in succession of each other. So it seems as if Joseph is always able to recognize these low points and the high points. And I'm saying that we looking at this have to be able to understand that when we're able to look to the Father and trust in his will and in his ways, that we kind of have to learn from this situation and not allow for negative situations and circumstances to be the things that dictate how we are, but being able to continue to always trust in the Most High. So I want to let's look at verse 10 really fast and then keep on going over here. Let's see here. Read for us verse 10.
Verse 10, excuse me. It says, and it came to be as she spoke to Joseph day by day that he did not listen to her, to lie with her, to be with her.
Okay, so day by day, this is something that just don't never stop. It keeps on going. She's persistent with her longings and her desires and her her pullings and all of these things. Day by day. This is something that keeps on going. Just like, when we think about that persistent drop, that drip that keeps on dripping, that persistent. If you think about a little drop of water, it's not really doing nothing just a couple times, but it keeps on dripping over a long period of time. It breaks even stone down and puts its imprint there just from the repetitiveness. And these kids, I don't know where they learn this from and how they understand this kind of this basic principle of repetitiveness. When they sit up there and they do this thing, they sit there and ask for this thing, and maybe you don't pay them no attention, and then they ask you again, and then they keep on doing it. Like they turn into almost robots. Mommy, can I have this? Mommy, can I have this? They don't do this to daddy, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
They don't do this to daddy, by the way. But it's just mommy, can I have this? Mommy, can I have this? And they just keep on going.
Yep.
I don't know where they get that from. I don't know where they learn it. They all learn it as if there's some kind of school somewhere that these kids go to learn these terrible behaviors. But I wanted to pull up real fast. I want to pull up Luke. Let's look over in Luke. It's an interesting little thought. We look at Luke. Luke chapter 18. Luke chapter 18, read verse 1 through 8.
It says, and he spoke a parable to them that they should always pray and not lose heart, saying, in a certain city there was a certain judge, not fearing Elohim nor regarding man. And a widow was in that city, and she came to him, saying, do right to me on my adversary. And he would not for a while, but after he said within himself, even if I do not fear Elohim nor regard man, yet because this widow troubles me, I shall do right to her, lest by her continual coming she wears me out. And the master said, hear what the unrighteous judge said. And shall Elohim not do right by all means to his own chosen ones who are crying out day and night to him and being patient over them? I say to you that he shall do right to them speedily. But when the Son of Adam comes, shall he find the belief on the earth?
Okay, so when we look at how the Most High moves, he's saying, for his people, when we are persistent in what we are asking of him, he's able to speedily come and help us, right? But I wanted to pay attention to when we look over here in verse 5. We look in verse 5. Let me just pull this up real quick. It says
The what?
the widow troubled me, I will avenge her, lest by her continual coming she weary me. Weary me. That's the word I want to look up there. Okay. So that word is giving you the idea of, let's see, it's a compound and a derivative of to hit under the eye, buffet or disable an antagonist as a pugilist. A pugilist is a boxer, somebody who punches people, is a pugilist. That is to tease or annoy into compliance. To subdue one's passions, to keep under or weary, right? So when we think about what's going on, just kind of the natural thing, right? Taking the most high out of the equation, because we know that he is going to be he is going to acknowledge the wants and the desires of his children and those who are coming to him, to are diligently coming and seeking after him. But looking at this wicked one, right? The wicked one is able to be wavered. He's able to be wavered and changed by the repetitive annoyance of this lady, right? It don't have nothing to do with right or wrong. He don't care whether she's right or wrong. He cares about her keep on coming over here. She's going to keep on coming and asking me over and over again. I'm tired of hearing her. Just here. You can have it. Right? He don't want to become weary of this woman coming and nagging him to do this thing, right? The wicked one. This judge is called a certain judge, not fearing Elohim nor regarding, right? Think about what's going on with that judgment. That judgment is really coming out of wickedness, right? Even though it ends up working off in her favor, right? But the judgment's coming out of wickedness because of she's going and she's like this little gnat, flying, buzzing around his head, and then over time he just gives in, right? So let's look. There's another place where we can see, where we see this same wearying. We see this same word used in another situation. Let's look over here in 1 Corinthians and let's see, 9 and 27. Actually, read 26 and 27. 1 Corinthians 9 and 26. 27 is what we're looking at.
Okay. Therefore, I run accordingly, not with uncertainty. Thus I fight, not as one who beats the air, but I treat my body severely, and make it my slave, lest having proclaimed to others, I myself might be rejected.
Okay, so let's see where our word is. Our word is, the King James says, but I keep under my body. So this version says, but I treat my body severely. The word in the King James, but I keep under my body. This is our word over here. That's with this idea of subduing or keeping under, right? This constant pressuring that is going on. But notice how this used over here. Over there, we're talking about the idea of wavering in judgment, which we would say is not something that we would want to follow after. But over here, when we talk about this same word being used, we're talking about in terms of our body, where we want to be able to kind of influence and be over our body, in comparison to our spirit, our inside, right? So we want to be able to bring our body to subjection and cause our body to waver and do the will of, to do the will of our spirit man, where it's kind of the opposite over here. So when we think about Joseph over here, where he's being enticed or nagged by the wife of Potiphar, and he's unmovable in his spirit. He's unmovable. But then now, so you have that kind of badgering that's going on with from the wife to him. And then now he has this other badgering that he has to do within his own self, where he has to badger his body now, so that his body can be in submission to his spirit man, so that he's able to maintain his righteousness with the Father. So we have this battle thing that's going on. But what we're talking about over here is this integrity, right? We're talking about this thing that is a result of our relationship with the Father. No matter how persistent these negative things, these words and ways are, no matter how persistent they are, we're able to, in spite of the persistency of wickedness, that we're able to be persistent with our badgering to our body, to put our body into subjection and cause our body to do what we wanted to do. See, the outside forces want for us to do what the outside forces want for them to do. And then meanwhile, we in our spirit are kind of doing the same thing on the inside. So we got this battle from stuff going on from the outside and stuff going on the inside, all trying to get the body to do something. Who's going to win? Let's look at Psalms. Got a verse over here in Psalms. Let's see, 62. Because we see these things happening with Joseph. He's able to just be like, he's able to reject all of the dealings, right? Well, let's look over here. Let's see, Psalm 62 and 6. What's that say?
It says, "He alone is my rock and my deliverance, my strong tower. I am not shaken."
Okay, very good. I am not shaken. I shall not be moved. I shall not be wavered. I shall not be caused to slip. I shall not be shaken or fall. I shall not be carried or cast out or to fallen in decay. Right? So we see all of these things that are connected with this word moat in the Hebrew. That is like Akare moat, yeah. But probably another form of that same word, I would say. If we was to go backward or forward with that 4131, it'd probably be give you that definition. Okay, so but when we look over here in Psalm 62, the thing is that the idea of the Most High Yah being my rock and my strength and my refuge. Verse 6. He alone is my rock and my deliverance, my strong tower. Because of the relationship that is had and fortified with the Father, he's able to not be shaken. Right. So we can testify to the fact that he has this right relationship and that he hasn't allowed his circumstances to waver him because of the fact that he's not shaken by what's going on. Because I mean, we don't know what the wife looked like. I mean, we could just give her the benefit of the doubt. She was probably beautiful. And even if she wasn't, you have this guy. He was in this pit. He's sitting there by himself. He's this servant and all of this. He's a human being. He needs to be strengthened from somewhere, right? And so we're able to see that he pulls his strength obviously from the Most High. But let's continue. Let's go back over here. We want to continue on. Let's go back over here, back to Genesis, and look at 11 and 12. Let's go back to here. Read for us 11 and 12.
Okay. And it came to be on a certain day when Joseph went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house was inside, that she caught him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand and fled and ran outside.
Now she at this point, she just had enough. She was done asking. She had enough. She's ready to just do whatever she got to do in order to get what she wants, right? And again, this persistent jabbing at Joseph, this persistent annoyance, this persistent pugilism that's going on with the wife towards Joseph, and again he's able to resist, right? He has every opportunity to give in to his carnality, but he is able to maintain something about himself and continue in righteousness as opposed to continuing in unrighteousness and wickedness. Let's look at this. Let's look at let's see here. Let's pull up Psalms 112, because what's happening over here, we're able to call that something. This thing that's going on where he's able to be persistent in his righteousness in spite of the fact that unrighteousness is pulling at him. If we pull up, let's see, Psalms 112. Let's read 5 through 7.
It says, "Good is a man showing favor and lending. He sustains his his sustains his matters in right ruling, for he is never shaken. The righteous is remembered forever. He is not afraid of an evil report. His heart is steadfast, trusting in Yahweh.
Okay, very good. So when we think about this, it starts off talking about this good is a man, right? Showing favor. This good man, he's able to, it says he sustains his matters in right ruling. That's what's going on with Joseph over here. He's sustaining his matters in right ruling. He's not being like that wicked judge over there who's being pulled and pushed by what's going on. He's not giving in to the circumstances and the situations that's going on around him. He's not allowing these outside influences to dictate what he's going to do, right? He is allowing his affairs to be guided with discretion, right? That good man is being guided with discretion. Over here, this says he sustains his matters in right ruling. That word is in some translations uses discretion. I want to pull that up. Let's go back to that. Let's go back to that. Let's see here. He will guide his affairs with discretion. Mishpat. So the scriptures calls that this right ruling. King James calls it discretion. Over here is, we see the Hebrew is mishpat, which is typically translated as judgment. It says probably a verdict pronounced judicially, especially a sentence or a formal decree, divine law, including the act, the place, the suit, the crime. It's interesting that when we look at this, right, and also thinking about what we read in Matthew, where you had this wicked judge, right? Because over here it's just kind of general. Over here, we just see this not random, but general term used a sentence or a verdict or a decree. But if we pay attention to this part of it, where it talks about divine law, and especially how the scriptures does it is right ruling, because there could be ruling, right? But we're talking about right ruling, right? Right ruling. And so it's interesting that they call that that is translated as discretion over here, because when we think about the idea of discretion, we're talking about the idea of the right thing being done no matter what, right? The right ruling being manifest no matter what, right? We're not worried with what's going on the sideline here or there. We're only worried with what's right, and the right thing is the thing that's being done, right? That's discretion, right? That's integrity, right? And so that's what we see when we look over here with Joseph, where he has every opportunity to go into something that he don't have no business going into. But in spite of that, he is manifesting some right ruling over here, right? he is operating in integrity, right? And again, we think about Psalms 112. Surely he shall not be moved forever, it says. For he is never shaken. Psalms 112 and 6. For he is never shaken. That one who sustains his matters in right ruling, that good man. Right? So one can only be considered to be good when they are operating in the Ruach HaKodesh, right? When they're trusting in the Most High, and the fear of the Most High is the thing that's motivating them and moving them forward, right? That's how we even get to that place in the first place of being that good man who showed favor, right? Who shows favor, right? That good man who shows favor was showed to him first, right? Then he's able to show the favor. So when we think about the idea of our relationship with the Most High, when we have that right relationship with the Almighty, and He deals with us in such a way, our relationship with Him, and we're able to participate in the Master's goodness, and then now, as a result of that, we keep that thing going again by letting the Most High be the thing that motivates us, where we get into that zone of being this person, like it says in Psalm 112, 5-7, this good man who's able now to guide your affairs in right ruling. When we do that, it says, surely he shall not be moved forever, right? He is never shaken, that person, right? So again, we have to assume, because of the fact that he wasn't shaken, that Joseph, maintained his relationship with the Most High, that he didn't allow for his situations and his circumstances to be the thing that define who he is and what he did, but he allowed his fear for the Most High to be that thing that dictates his actions. And we see the results of it was the fact that he was indeed not moved. Okay, let's look at another verse. Let's look at let's see here. Let's look at what this says. 25. Psalms 25 and 21.
Let integrity and straightness guard me, for I have waited for you.
Okay, let integrity. That's what we're talking about over here. Integrity. What's that word they translated into integrity over there? Tome, which means completeness, innocence, full, perfect, uprightly or uprightness. We talked about perfectness or completeness last week, right? Where Yeshua said, be you therefore perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect, right? Be you therefore complete, for your Father in heaven is complete, right? Be you therefore, we could have just said, be you therefore full of integrity, because your Father in heaven is full of integrity, right? When we look over here and think about this idea, look at this verse. It says, let integrity and uprightness preserve me. Let it preserve me. this integrity and this uprightness. Let integrity and straightness guard me. Right? What is that? Shamar? What is that? Preserve. What word is that? Oh, that's not Tsar. Which means, let's see, guard, protect, maintain, conceal, keep, preserve, all of those things, right? So your integrity, right? Your completeness, your perfectness in the Most High guards you. We see where it guarded Joseph over there, right?
Mhm.
Where she wanted to do all this stuff with him. And he was like, nah, you ain't doing this stuff with me. I'm getting up out of here. Right? That is his integrity working. That is his uprightness working. His desire within him fighting against his body at the same time where the external forces are battling from the outside. He's battling on the inside, except he's winning. His spirit man is winning against the external forces that's happening on the outside. So when we think about this, again, we always want to be able to think about this and these underlying principles, these things that's going on. We see these things happening with Joseph. How much more so when we think about in terms of how we are to be now as we operate through the Ruach HaKodesh, right? Joseph was able to have whatever level of commitment that he had to the Most High at that time. We're able to have that and then some when we think about what's provided for us through the Ruach HaKodesh. Where when we think about what the new covenant is, it changes us from the inside, which we need that change from the inside because we gotta have that repetitive pugilism going on from the inside out, because we most certainly have that repetitive pugilism happening from the outside in, right? The forces that are without are continually trying to badger against our flesh from the outside and cause us to do things that are pleasing to the flesh. But because of what the Spirit does on the inside of us, it gives us the strength, power, and ability to be able to fight against what's going on and work against these outside influences and allow the inside to be the thing that influences us. So that's why it's so much more than you just doing things. Because anybody can do things. Anybody's able to do things, right? That's not what the new covenant is about. It's not just about you doing things, right? If we look, if you look over here, let's see. Let me pull this up. Let me pull this verse up. Popular verse. Let's read 25. We want to get to 27. So start at 25.
And I shall sprinkle clean water on you, and you shall be clean. From all your filthiness and from all your idols I cleanse you. And I shall give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. And I shall take the heart of stone out of your flesh, and I shall give you a heart of flesh, and put my spirit within you, and I shall cause you to walk in my laws and guard my right rulings, and shall do them.
Okay, very good. So that spirit that is put within you will cause you to walk in my ways, guard my right rulings, my judgments, my right rulings, my integrity. Right? That's the same word over here. Let's see here. I don't want to just sit up here and say stuff. 27, right there. What did I say? Mishpat, same word, right? So it's going to cause you to walk in my laws, to guard my right rulings, which is integrity, that integrity word, and do them. And do them. That's actually a word over there, doing it, right? Putting that stuff into action, to do it or to make it, right?
Mhm.
So there's action that's associated with it, but it is initiated from the inside, right? From the spirit that's put in you. So there's a changing that's going on the inside of you that's causing you to want to do these things, right? And to make these things something that you can't wait to do. That you love to do these things. These things become part of who you are on the inside, right? Which is different from you just looking at something and seeing the thing and doing it, right? It's necessary for you to have this internal transformation to happen because something's going to happen, and your Potiphar's wife is going to come along. Your Potiphar's wife, whatever that situation may be, is going to come along and get to pulling and tugging on you. And then unless you got that Ruach HaKodesh on the inside of you, you gonna sit up here and you gonna go ahead and just succumb to the advances of your Potiphar's wife, right? And so we have to get to the place of operating in integrity, which is, again, you manifesting the Ruach inside of you.
Mhm.
And again, it's more than you just doing the things, right? Because we're talking about that internal transformation, that transformation from the inside. Okay, let's look at some more verses over here. Let's pull up. Let's see here. Do I have anything to add as I find my mouse, my cursor?
No, not yet. Excuse
Okay. Let's look at Proverbs. Proverbs 12 and 22. What's that say?
Lying lips are an abomination to Yahweh, but those who deal truly are his delight.
Okay, very good. Lying lips are an abomination, it says. Abomination. We sit up here and manifest wickedness, right? Unrighteousness. These acts, these ways, acts, and deeds are an abomination to the Most High. But he says those that deal truly are his delight. Those that deal truly are his delight. What's that word mean? Ooh, emunah, firmness. Firmness. Interesting. So those who operate in firmness are truly a delight to the Most High. He's so happy about firmness. Wishy-washiness, he's not into. Most High not into people that's wavering, that's going back and forth between rightness and wrongness, right? He's not interested in these people that's going out. And lying lips could be much more than just you sitting up here, just, telling a story or something. Because guess what? If I'm sitting up here saying that I'm walking in righteousness, and then meanwhile, I be doing all kinds of acts of unrighteousness, that's some lying lips right there for you, right there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If I set it up so that I'm this person who I go around and I'm righteous, right? I'm living this way. I'm a beacon, a light. I am a representative of the master, and meanwhile, I got a cold, wicked heart. Right, that's some lying lips for you, right there. He said that's some lukewarmness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that verse tells us that those who deal truly are his delight. So when we able to be firm in our situation and not be wavered by our external situations, right? When we're able to maintain our integrity, when we're able to maintain our righteousness, when we're able to allow the Most High to be manifest in our hearts and in our minds and through our actions, we are a delight to the Most High. We're his delight, it says. Right? That's what that scripture is telling us over there. Right? When we're able to be good representatives of Yeshua, we're a delight to the Most High. But when we say that we're representatives of Yeshua and we're walking around here looking just like the people in the world, that's some lying lips right there. And he's calling that an abomination.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's get some more verses over here. What happens if we pull up 2 Corinthians? 2 Corinthians chapter 8 and 21. What does that say?
For we provide what is right, not only in the sight of Yahweh, but also in the sight of men.
Okay, very interesting. So when we as followers of Yeshua, right, both of these things are necessary, right? And so it's easy. It can be easy to look a certain kind of way in the sight of men, right? It's one thing to say that when people see us in the sight of people, that we provide that which is right in the sight of men. But it's necessary for us to provide what is right, not only in the sight of the Most High, but men also. And so that entails us walking in integrity, right? Because not only are we doing things, but we have a right relationship with the Most High where he's pleased with us on the inside, and then we manifest that, and then so that people are able to see. And so again, we look over here at Joseph, where he is walking in his righteousness and receiving all this blessings and prosperity from the Most High. He's been put in this position in the house of Potiphar, and where people are able to see his prosperity, so much so that he's put in this position. But also, in spite of what's going on around him, the badgering of this of Joseph by Potiphar's wife, in spite of that, he's able to maintain his righteousness and stand firm in his rightness. Okay, so I want to finish reading the rest of this chapter and then talk a little bit more. Let's go back to Genesis 39 where we were, and let's just read the rest of that. Let's see, verse 13. Just read 13 there to the end.
Okay. Let me get it here. 13. And it came to be when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and fled outside, that she called to the men of her house and spoke to them, saying, See, he has brought in to us a Hebrew to mock us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I cried with a loud voice. And it came to be when he heard that I lifted my voice and cried out, that he left his garment with me and fled and went outside. And she kept his garment with her until his master came home. And she spoke to him these same words, saying, the Hebrew servant whom you brought to us came in to me to mock me. So it came to be, as I lifted my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled outside. And it came to be, when his master heard the words which his wife spoke to him, saying, Your servant did to me according to these words, that his displeasure burned. Then Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, a place where the sovereign's prisoners were confined. And he was there in the prison. But Yahweh was with Joseph and extended loving commitment to him, and he gave him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. And the prison warden gave into the hand of Joseph all the prisoners who were in prison, and whatever was done there was his doing. The prison warden did not look into any point that was under Joseph's hand, because Yahweh was with him, and whatever he did, Yahweh made it prosper.
Okay, so it's interesting. We see this same kind of a thing go on with Joseph over here in prison, where the warden, it says, did not look into any point that was under Joseph's hand. It was kind of the same kind of the thing that we see with Potiphar, when he was on the outside, in terms of, I don't know what kind of position he had in prison, but it was kind of like unto the thing that he had when he was out of prison. And also it's interesting to note that I don't know about you, but when I think about the accusation of Joseph, if I was this dignitary, this royalty person, and somebody was sitting up here talking about they was trying to accost my wife, prison wasn't going to be the place for him. Prison's not the place for that person, right? He would be taking a dirt nap, right? And so it's interesting. I think, again, even the fact that he's even imprisoned, I think speaks to the relationship that Joseph had with Potiphar, where he punished him. I guess he punished him. There was a level of punishment, but there was also a level of grace that was involved as well. Because why was his life spared for that? I don't know that. But what we do know is that the Most High is with him, right? So when we think about the fact that Joseph, again, we see again, it seems like it's I don't know, it just seems like it's a quick turnover. There's things that happen. There's unfavorable things that happen. But inside of this unfavorableness is favor, right? That come from the Most High. And so we see that these accusations come against Joseph, and in spite of these things that come against him, he still prospers, right? He still prospers in spite of the fact that these false accusations are coming against him. And so we look and see that, and something that we have to think about when we see this, and Joseph is a perfect example of this thing, that, bad stuff happens to the Most High's people, where we see that, he's all the way in the right over here. There's nothing that we can sit up here and say about what Joseph is doing in these particular situations. And things are happening to him, being done to him by these other people. And still the Most High is sustaining him in these things, where he's in a situation where he probably should have received something way more harsh than what he did receive. He's over here where he's basically running the prison that he's in. Huh?
The guys at the prison guard, whoever, the warden is thinking about me.
Right. He's in the same situation where he's in prison, and the prison guard, whatever he says goes. So he's prospering in this prison, right? But again, it goes back to the necessity for us to be stable in our relationship with the Most High. Integrity, for us to be able to maintain that right ruling in our doings. Let's look at a couple more verses over here. Let's see here. Let's look at let's pull up, let's see, Wisdom chapter 3. and verse 9. Wisdom chapter 3 and verse 9.
It says
Can you read that?
that they put their trust in him. My bad. They that put their trust in him shall understand the truth, and such as be faithful in love shall abide with him. For grace and mercy is to his saints, and he hath care for his elect.
Okay, very good. So when we think about this again, when we think about this idea of being steadfast in the Most High and what happens to us and for us as a result of it, things are going to happen that are unfavorable to us, right? But when we put our trust in Him, it says, they that put their trust in him, those ones shall understand the truth. So when we think about, so if we was to sit up here and think about, so when we look at these apocryphal verses, right? These things are written in the text that we have for these are in Greek. So when we think about what this is talking about, we have to think about it from the Greek perspective and then go backwards into the Hebraic perspective. So if we was to look at what truth is in the Greek and then go back to the Hebrew, from there it's going to give us, let's see, it's going to give us this word here, which means what? Stability, certainty. Right? So if we're which is interesting because when we think about the idea of trusting, right, we're putting our trust or our faith or our firmness in, these words are connected to each other. When we're able to trust in him, we're able to understand truth or stability. When we're able to be firm with the Most High, we're able to understand what stability is, which is another way to even think about firmness or surety. Right? So one thing facilitates the other. When we're able to rightly maintain our trust and faith in the one who's able to support us and maintain us, we're able to actually understand what support and maintenance actually is in the first place. So we see that Joseph is sitting up here, he's trusted in the Most High, he's doing what's right, things are happening, but he's still trusting in the Most High and doing what's right. And then you see what happens. So we see where he potentially could have flipped. He could have flipped right over there, right? Huh? He could have went to the other side right there when he was down there in that pit. I mean, when he's down there in that prison. Well, we could go back to the pit, right? But he must have maintained that because we see the results. And then over here we see where he does these actions that are in righteousness, manifesting his integrity and firmness in righteousness. And then we see that there was a thing that happened, this negative thing that happened, but at the same time, in this quote unquote negativity, we see positiveness come out of it. Where, yes, he's in prison, but he's ruling it. Right? So he's having a relatively good situation in his bad situation. And so when we think about that, how we kind of gain things from what we're reading over here, we have to be able to, in spite of the fact of these things that happen that can rightly be called negative things that's going on in our lives, negative influences, these things that are coming and jabbing at us and working at our body, causing for us to succumb to our carnal mind and desires, right? When we're able to maintain that spiritual strength inside of us and lean on the Most High, who strengthens us, and trust in Him instead of these things that we can feel and touch, He is there for us and is with us every step of the way.
I think that a lot of times people lose integrity or trust, like I was saying before, when they don't feel like they're getting what they deserve or what they want.
Right, which that's carnal.
Yeah.
Because we, first of all, we don't always know what we deserve or even what we want, for one. But even still, we have to think about, okay, look at Joseph. He's in a place where he don't have no control of nothing, right? He's in an exiled situation. He don't have control, right? So he can have a type of blessing inside of his situation, but at the end of the day, he don't have any control of what's going on. So he has to be able to work inside of that context. Now he's able to receive blessings, like he's in prison, like he's literally in prison, but he's able to prosper in prison, right? He's not free. He got bad stuff happening to him. He's not free. He's in prison, but he's able to prosper. He's able to make the best out of his situation.
I think about people who are in poverty, or they don't, they might not have that much money.
Same thing.
But they're able to prosper even in their poverty.
It's the exact same thing. He was a servant. He was a slave. He was in control of Potiphar's affairs, but he was a servant at the same time. So he made the best of a situation. He didn't have any control over his own situation. He was like the steward of somebody else's situation. So the same thing can be said about any other situation. You're a slave. Worse than ever, walking around. You can't do whatever you want to do. You do what them people allow for you to do. But inside of that, you're still able to have different levels of favor that come from the Most High. In spite of the things that's going on around us. So when we see with Joseph and we looked at his situation where he wasn't in the perfect situation, right? He was a servant. He wasn't in control of his life, but at the same time, he's able to receive blessings from the Most High when he's able to maintain his faith and trust in the Most High. They that put their trust in him shall understand the truth. Yeshua, it says, is the way, the truth, and the life. When we put our trust in him, they that put their trust in him shall understand Yeshua. If Yeshua is the truth, we could put him in that verse right there because he is the truth. He's the truth. Right? Okay, let's look at a couple more things before we're done over here. Let's look at a couple more things over here. Let's pull up First Peter. First Peter 5, verse 8. First Peter 5, verse 8 through verse 10. Let me put that up here real quick.
Start now.
Yes.
It says, "Be sober, watch, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Resist him, firm in belief, knowing that the same hardships are experienced by your brotherhood in the world. And the Elohim of all favor, who called you to his everlasting esteem by Messiah Yeshua, after you have suffered a while, himself protect, establish, strengthen, and settle you."
Okay, so it says resist him, the adversary, the devil, the adversary, your own carnal mind, your flesh. Resist him, firm in the belief, firm in faith. Knowing that the same hardships are experienced by your brotherhood in the world. So we have to be able to, in spite of the fact that these things are going on, it says be sober and watch. Don't be drunk with the things that's going. And I don't mean just sipping on spirits and things drunk. I mean, we had to be, it's saying be sober and watch. You be aware of what's going on around you and watch, because there's adversities that's going on that's ready to suck you up and devour you. And it's necessary to be able to know what's going on around you with your sober mind watching, so that you're able to resist the adversary and be firm in your firmness. Right? Faith in and of itself is firmness. It's saying be firm in your firmness. Right? Not being wishy-washy. Right? Because the Most High detests those things, right? What you trying to say?
I was gonna say that something that I spoke to the ladies about before is that carnal resonates with carnal and spiritual resonates with spiritual. So if we're firm in our belief, we're not going to resonate. We're not going to ring, whenever somebody hits the carnal note or tune, our tune fork isn't going to ring with that, because we're not on that frequency, and that if we have any shakiness in our firmness, if we're off balance, we're going to fall. As soon as that carnal thing hits, we're going to ring with it. And I just think about even with Joseph, how if he even had some carnality in him, if there was a part in him that could ring, it would have rung, you know. But because he was so firm in his firmness, there wasn't any room for that to even have taken place.
Yeah. Yes. So again, which goes along with the idea of soberness, right? Being able to be aware of what's going on and be connected to the Most High, right? Joseph didn't he didn't buy in to the hype, which was his life, where he was the controller of Potiphar's situation. He could have been like, look at me in my situation, just living it up. Oh, Potiphar's wife is trying to do stuff. that's that's part of my perks or something, right? But he was able to see he didn't become drunken by his situation. He was able to remain sober and watch. And so we have to be able to do the same, because the Most High is there for us when we're able to trust in him. And so we have to be able to remain sober and watch, because the adversary is working hard against us, right?
People fall and they don't even know how they fell.
Don't even know how they got there, because they was all drunk walking around not knowing what was what, right? They got drunk by situations and circumstances that was going on around them, and then next thing they knew, they was in this stupor, right? Passed out somewhere. Right? And so we have to be able to be firm in our firmness and maintain integrity, maintain our level of right ruling in spite of those things which going on around us. And knowing that, because of the fact that we are in the Most High, we're in Messiah, because of the fact that we're in Messiah, these things is going to happen to us. Bad stuff is going to happen on purpose. It's going to happen. The Most High has purposed bad stuff to happen to us, so that he can get us to the place that he would have for us to be. Right? So let's look at one more verse over here. Let's pull up let's pull up James 1 and 2 through 4. Oh, hold on. Let me just. Okay, go ahead and read James 1, 2 through 4.
It says, my brothers, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that proving of your belief works endurance. And let endurance have a perfect work, so that you be perfect and complete, lacking in naught.
Okay, very good. So when we think about Joseph, right? He was following after the Most High faithfully, but stuff was going on around him. Bad stuff was happening. He got this stuff that he can't control and is going on. But guess what that did? That proved his firmness. It proved his firmness, and not only did it prove his firmness, it manifested endurance. So it proved his firmness and it manifested endurance. Right. So he got these things that's going on that's negative, and it seemed like it's one thing after another. But his faith, his firmness is getting firmer, and he's gaining endurance. He's gaining an ability to maintain his firmness throughout various situations. Endurance. And verse 4 says, and let endurance have a perfect work, so that you be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. So when we think about us and our situations where we have these various trials and tribulations that are coming against us, they're probably not as bad as what happened to Joseph, but if they was, we can know that as we're going through this in faith, trusting in Messiah the whole time, trusting in him, he's able to get us through and help us to maintain our various levels of integrity and to move us through these trials and cause us to prosper in the midst. That is how we take up our torture stake, right? Yeshua said, if you want to be my disciple, then pick up your cross and follow me. Right? Well, this is what it looks like over here. Getting thrown in the pit and getting sold into slavery and getting lied on by people who's supposed to be your people, right? And in spite of all of these bad things happening to you, you maintaining your integrity with the Most High and through the power of the Ruach HaKodesh, and not allowing your situations and your trials and tribulations to cause you to waver, but actually these trials and tribulations are causing you to be made perfect. We look at Joseph. This is a situation where he, in the scope of things, was brought down low, right? He was up on his high horse. And then it seems like every time he's brought down. Every time, right? He's brought down, but as he's brought down, he's also lifted up. And so we could think about Joseph again and relate him to Yeshua, where Yeshua, of course, was brought down, right? But even though he was brought down, he was also lifted up simultaneously, right? There's a sacrifice that's being made. And so we see that with Joseph, where he has this his body, his carnality is being sacrificed. He could sit up here and follow the desires of his carnal mind and his flesh, but he sacrificed his own carnal desires for that of righteousness. And that's what we must also do, right? Our body, our flesh wants to sit up here and do this or that, but we must deny our flesh and be like the Most High is with us, where he gives in to our desires. Our spirit is desiring for our body to get in line with it, where our body wants our body to get in line with it, when we have to choose that spirit side and move along in righteousness. So in spite of the fact that we have all of these external forces that's badgering us and that's picking away at our flesh to pull it to one way, we have to, through our spirit, man, also beat against our flesh and beat it down to bring it in submission to our spirit, man, to allow us to be able to walk in righteousness and firmness. So just like we look at Joseph in this particular part of his journey, he can't see the end right now. He can't see what's going to happen. We know because we read the story already, but he's in it. He can't see what's going to happen. But in spite of that, he's still maintaining his faith in the Most High, and he's trusting in the Father to get him through these situations and continue to maintain and prosper him in these situations. So the same thing is true for us, where we may not know exactly what the Most High has in store for us, but in spite of that, we have to be able to continue to trust in him, continue to remain firm, continue to not be wishy-washy out here, but firm and established in our faith in Messiah, continuing on forward and trusting that the Most High will be with us every step of the way, in the high points and especially in the low points. And to do that again, it looks like us walking in integrity. That looks like us maintaining our firmness in spite of the comfortability of it. It's probably going to be uncomfortable for us to maintain that firmness, but we have to, in spite of that fact, maintain it anyway. Right? And we have a perfect example of that in Joseph, where he has all of these adversities against him, all of these things that's going on against him, and every step of the way he continues to trust in the Most High, and the Most High continues to bless him in the midst of all of these things that's going on around him. Okay, so that being said, what?
I have a song, I think Psalm 18 goes with this, but specifically verse 20.
Hold on.
Okay. 18.
Psalm 18, verse what?
20. Where it says, Yahweh rewarded me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanness of my hands. He repaid me, for I have guarded the ways of Yahweh and have not acted wrongly against my Elohim. For all his right rulings are before me, and I did not turn from his laws. And then if you go down to it keeps going, but it says here I was
I went down. So
okay. If you go down to verse 28, where it says, verse 28 says, for you yourself light my lamp. Yahweh, my Elohim, makes my darkness light. And I just was thinking about how when you're going through adversity and that darkness, you have to really, if you search out the Most High, he'll put light on that situation.
Yeah. Yes.
I like how the King James says, "For thou wilt light my candle." Like,
Yeah. And so that also speaks to the fact of thinking about it from that new covenant perspective where the Most High is lighting the candle. He's the one that's putting the desire in you to walk in his ways. And as long as we're able to trust in him, he brings fire to our situation. He gives us the strength, power, and ability to continue on in the thing. And so it might be dark, but we're walking around with a light that he sparked.
people on the outside don't see things the same way we see them because we have the light.
We got the light. They walking around in darkness. We walking around in darkness too, but at least we got a light. We got a candle. Right? We got a LED flashlight with 10,000 lumens. Right? Through Yeshua, through the Ruach HaKodesh in us. So I'm saying all that just to say that we must expect darkness, thick darkness. We must expect adversity, hard adversity. But we have to be able to not let that adversity say who we are or what we do. What we do is based on the fear of the Most High and based off our relationship with him, and we act according to that, not according to the thick darkness and the hard adversity. And we see a perfect example of that for us with Joseph over here in the beginnings of his journey in Egypt. You know, we're in our Egypt even right now, and our Potiphar's wife is tugging at our clothes, and Potiphar's throwing us in prison. But we have to continue on in rightness and maintaining and manifesting our integrity in spite of all of these things that's going on around us, and knowing that when we do that, we're just getting stronger. We're just getting stronger, and we're just allowing for the goodness of the Most High to be manifest in our lives and through us in this world. Okay, so does anybody have any thoughts or questions or comments about any of that stuff? Okay, so
Yeah. I think I was on mute. No, I'm saying you pretty much covered it. Good lesson.
Okay. All right.
Torah put 2 Corinthians 4 verses 8 through 12.
Okay, hold on one second. Let's see here. 2 Corinthians 4.
Being hard pressed on every side, but not crushed. Being perplexed, but not in despair. Oh, in verse 9 or through 12. Okay. Being persecuted, but not forsaken. Being thrown down, but not destroyed. Always bearing about in the body the dying, bearing about in the body the dying of the Master Yeshua, that the life of Yeshua might also be manifested in our body. For we, the living, are always delivered to death for the sake of Yeshua, that the life of Yeshua might also be manifested in our mortal flesh. So the death indeed is working in us, but the life in you.
Okay, very good. So when we think about these things, this is a good verse too. When we think about the idea of things happening that's just not even bad, like it's like really bad. Right, there's bad stuff happening all over the place, and you know we have to we must expect these things, but know that when these things happen, it gives us the opportunity to trust in the Most High. Right, we need to be sitting up here, um, asking the Father for another opportunity to trust in Him. Right, because it's only going to bring us to perfection. Right, and knowing that when we are able to continue on in Him and trusting in Him is only going to get our bond with the Most High is only going to become stronger, right? It's only going to continue to bring us into perfection, right? And so, looking at Joseph is, we're able to see kind of this progression where these things keep on happening, but he keeps on trusting, and it gives us the example for us how we are to be in this time, in this world, through Yeshua. To things are going to keep on happening, but we have to just keep on trusting, right? Okay. All right, so that being said, I think that we will be done for now. And Yah willing, we will be back next week, continuing on with our look at Joseph and looking at the Torah portion.
All right. Shabbat
Okay.
shalom, everybody.
All right. Shabbat shalom.
All right, y'all. Talk to y'all later. Shabbat shalom.
All right. Shabbat shalom.